Humans are amazingly resilient creatures who can survive in harsh environments and even thrive under the most challenging of situations. But we have become comfortable in the modern world, and many have lost touch with nature. Every once in a while, individuals have to confront that fact in a battle of life and death. Here are 5 incredible people who triumphed over wild predators. Number 5. Elena Hansen. It was July 22, 2008, when 57-year-old Elena Hansen from Twin Oaks, California, was digging an irrigation ditch on her Kern County ranch with her 2 large dogs by her side, Deck and Arky. Elena had been working in the same spot for the past couple of days. When she took a break for a moment, she never even saw it. But a hungry black bear was stalking her. Within seconds, the 150-pound animal rushed her from out of nowhere and knocked her to the ground before digging in. The bear targeted her head and face, going in for the kill. She could actually feel the teeth piercing her skull as the animal shook her violently. She could feel the wetness of her own blood pouring over her body. The most vivid thing she remembers was when it paused from the attack just to spit out her teeth. She figured that was it for her and she was done for. It had all happened so fast, and she recalled thinking at the time about how she was going to leave her son behind. But then something took over. That survival instinct in all of us, and with her adrenaline pumping, she just started fighting back, going for the bear's eyes while also screaming for her dogs to come help. And then she heard her 2 dogs barking fiercely and coming to her rescue. And Deck, at 160 pounds, came slamming in across the bear, and then the 2 animals started going at it. She figured that if her dogs, Deck a mastiff and Arky a wolfhound, were willing to sacrifice their lives for her, well, she better try and do something about it. Gathering all the strength she had with her face torn apart, she started making her getaway. Elena could barely see at this point and had to feel her way down a creek, at which point she got stuck in a cactus-filled ravine. The cacti around the area were too high, and it became tougher to push through with all her injuries. Luckily, Arky ran up the ravine and cleared the cacti out for her so she could continue moving forward. For 10 minutes she struggled, one step at a time, until she was able to get to her car. An even bigger task was then ahead of her, where she would need to drive 4 miles to head to the nearest fire station for help. However, her injuries were quite severe, to say the least. When the bear first bit, it destroyed the bridge of her nose, and then tore her ears off and chewed out 14 teeth, including most of her upper gums and palate. It ripped through her lips, a portion of her face and scalp. Somehow, though, she managed to navigate herself through the logging road and towards that fire station. Once she was close, she feared her injury would be so horrific that the firefighters might pass out before they could even help her. To break that tension, when she approached Captain Merrill, she yelled out, "Honey, I'm home." Merrill had known Elena but couldn't recognize her, and was stunned when she told him who she was. She gave up all her information, everything from her full name and address to her next of kin and shoe size. It was all she could do to help calm the firefighters and, at the same time, keep herself busy until the helicopter arrived. Hansen was flown to the hospital and underwent heavy surgery under 2 surgeons. Her injuries were so severe, one of her doctors, Dr. Kimberly Lee, estimates she made over 1,000 stitches on her face alone. Lee also said Elena was optimistic about her recovery, and Elena's son was also positive about it too, saying it would take more than a bear to get rid of her. Over time, Elena has written a book recounting her life and the story of what happened to her. While her recovery will continue on, she remains positive and says while she's wary whenever she's outdoors, she doesn't blame the bear for the attack. Both Deke and Arky also survived the attack and made it out with only minor injuries. Number 4, David Parker. The man had nothing but a pocket knife, and he used it to the fullest. In August of 2002 in Port Alice, British Columbia, 61-year-old native David Parker decided it would be a good day for a late afternoon walk. His legs were cramping after working on the roof of his small house all day. He figured a good walk would help relieve them. He then set out on a route he was familiar with. He made it about a mile before it began to rain heavily. It was one of those heavy showers that can't last too long, so he ducked underneath a rock ledge to wait it out. There was the sound of pounding water all around, and then something else. A different noise grabbed his attention, and when he turned to see what it was, staring right at him was a young male cougar, just an arm's length away from his face. He turned to run, but that was a mistake. The animal, sensing his prey getting away, pounced on Parker, sinking its teeth right into his head. And they hit the ground, and within seconds, the man's entire scalp was all but missing. The cougar kept going, cracking the man's left cheekbone, breaking his jaw and the orbital bones around his eyes. With his right ear hanging on by a thread, that's when he remembered he had his knife. And while he reached for it, he received another bite to the face, and that one had his eye pop out of its socket. He managed to unfold the small blade, and then he plunged it into the animal's neck several times. The cougar loosened its grip, and after a few moments, let out its last breath. David managed to take it out, but he was in seriously rough shape and far from home. His only real option, though, was to try to get there. He stayed in the middle of the road while he walked, figuring that if he collapsed, it was the best chance of being found. But he made it. When he was close, another worker saw him staggering down the road. David was then airlifted to Victoria's Royal Jubilee Hospital, where he underwent 10 hours of surgery that saved his life. For more than 2 years, Parker made multiple visits to doctors and surgeons in order to reconstruct his skull, scalp, and reconnect his jaw. He was constantly in pain and had reoccurring nightmares about his encounter, but over time, Parker has learned to look back and move on with his life. And he adds, "I was in the wrong place at the wrong time." That's about all there was to it. Number 3, KLA Dei. At 56 years old, KLA Dei was tending to her field in the village of Semkati in North Jakoli, India in August of 2014. It was a normal day filled with chores and tasks that needed to get done. Devi was carrying a pail of water up from the canal in order to pour it on her crops, and out of nowhere, a large leopard lunged at her. The widow fought for her life as the cat clawed, bit, and slashed, but KLA never gave up. She managed to get a hold of a sickle and got her footing and fought the animal one-on-one. But KLA was injured badly. The cat had caused several deep cuts and fractures to her body, including 2 breaks, one in each arm. According to Devi, this battle took place for close to 30 minutes as the leopard just wouldn't let her get away. Every time she tried, she was forced to confront it again and fight. As she screamed for help, finally some of the villagers from her district came running, and once they got there, the leopard was dead. And KLA had slashed it enough times to put it down. While her injuries weren't life-threatening, Devi had to walk in order to get to the hospital. But beyond just the physical injuries, she suffered severe emotional trauma from the attack, as the entire time she thought she wasn't going to get out alive. The issue with leopards in India is dire. As more and more people encroach on their territory, encounters between the animals and humans becomes unavoidable. Attacks on humans from animals are not rare in India. In 2009, a 9-year-old boy had to fight a leopard that attacked his sister, while in another incident, video footage captured a leopard creeping inside a Mumbai apartment block complex before snatching up a small dog for a meal. And there's many more. And as for Devi, well, she's returned to her duties and is out there in the open. Always in the back of her mind is the attack that almost killed her. She keeps a vigilant eye as best she can, but She never feels like there aren't eyes of a predator crouched down in the brush, watching her. Number 2, Eric Nerous. Thanks to the film Jaws, many people are afraid to go in the ocean. In reality, sharks rarely attack humans on purpose. Most of the time, we're mistaken for something else like a seal, their main source of food, while swimming in their habitat. But the damage has been done, and people seem to either fear sharks or never really think about them. However, sharks will always shark. It's impossible to predict when they will attack, just as 41-year-old Australian diver Eric Nerous found out. It was January 23rd of 2007 when Nerous, along with his son and friends, decided to go hunting for abalone off the coast of Cape Howe. They all plopped in at a spot that went down around 25 feet, but conditions were murky, so visibility was tough. All of a sudden, Nerous felt the teeth of a great white shark sink into his body. And the shark shook him violently for a moment, and that's when he realized that half his body was actually inside the shark. It had attacked from his head and bit down around his lower torso. He was literally looking inside the shark's jaws. Normally, any diver would have been torn in half immediately, or at the very least, fatally wounded by this. But luckily, Nerous was wearing a lead-lined vest, not because he thought he'd be attacked, but because it would help weigh him down and make it easier to get to the sea floor. Because of that vest, shark bite didn't fully penetrate. Fighting desperately, Nerous felt around for the eye sockets and poked the shark with his fingers. The shark reacted by opening its mouth, and Nerous was able to wriggle his way out from the belly of the beast. He estimates he must have stayed inside that shark's mouth for at least 2 minutes. Once he managed to escape, it still tried attacking him, so he took a chisel, which he used to chip abalone from the rocks, and jabbed the shark's eyes with it. And with that, he was able to swim up to the surface. As he made his way, he was surrounded by his own blood and could still see the dark shape of the shark circling close to his feet. Once he got on the boat, his son helped him in, and he was rushed to the hospital for treatment. There, Nerous was treated for deep cuts to his head, torso, and his left arm. In later interviews, Nerous recounted how in more than 30 years of him diving, he's never heard of a shark attack in that area until his experience. And just a few months later, Eric would return to the water to pick up right where he left off in order to get his hands on those abalone. While his family wasn't too happy with the decision, he said he simply missed the water too much. While he still continues with his therapy and often gets nightmares about the encounter, for him, diving and fishing is his life, and nothing can stop him from doing it. Number 1. Shat Madova. We've all heard of the children's story, The Big Bad Wolf Eating Grandma. But in the case of 56-year-old grandmother Shat Madova from a small village in Dagestan, it's the other way around. In 2012, Shat was tending her sister's farm when she saw a wolf trying to take out one of the cows on the property. She ran towards the wolf with an axe in hand, yelling and waving it around to scare the predator off. While she managed to save the calf from getting slaughtered, the problem was that the wolf was still hungry, and now its attention turned towards her. After a momentary standoff, the animal leapt at her with its mouth wide open, clamping down on her arm while clawing at her legs. She tried to pry open the wolf's mouth but couldn't, was screaming for help, but out there in the middle of nowhere, nobody could hear her. On the ground, she scrambled to get her hands back on the axe because, really, that was her only chance. With her arms and legs bleeding from the wound, she managed to get it, and she struck the animal several times in the head and upper body. The wolf, though, was willing to fight till the end. Eventually, the axe wounds were too much for it, and it let go, walking a few yards away before falling to the ground and dying. After that, the Russian grandma was taken to the hospital for her wounds to be treated, and soon, stories of her heroic efforts were known by everyone in the area and she was hailed as a local hero. Russian wolves are some of the most dangerous animals in the entire country and can easily weigh around 160 pounds. Most of them live in packs and attack in that way, which is why this lone wolf was probably so desperate for food, as it could have been several days since it had last eaten. Back in the old days in this part of the world, one of the most cruel types of executions was to leave people tied to a tree in the forest and have them be devoured alive by wolves. Wolves attacking humans is a rare occurrence, but when it does happen, people don't usually walk away from it the way Aisha was able to. So there were 5 incredible people who triumphed over wild predators. If you enjoyed this, remember to subscribe, hit the bell so you can know when we're putting out our new content. It's 3 new episodes every single week. Thanks so much for stopping by and keeping me company. You guys watch your backs out there. I'll see you in the next one.